pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you remain standing, please? Pastor Joel Holes of the Angelical Lutheran Church will give us our invocation this evening.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, you have called each of us to do our best. You have given us the guidance and strength to do those things that are needed for the blessings of this community, to use the blessings that you have showered upon us, and we just have to learn to use them in the best way. We ask you to guide those that have been given the special responsibilities of overseeing the work of our community and to help it to improve to its fullest ability. Bless this meeting so that our discussions may be guided in a way that sees your hand in all this work and how we can do your will to improve this community. In all our discussions, guide us with the peace that you alone provide so that all things be to your glory. Be with us then in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilwoman Gavarecki.
Present.
Councilman Templin is asked to be excused. Councilman Cisco.
Present.
Councilman Hayes. He will be late. Councilman DeGiulio.
Here.
Pro Tem Keenan.
Present.
Treasurer Armstrong.
Present.
And Mayor Mategas.
Present.
We have a quorum.
I will ask for a motion for corrections and approval of the agenda for June 11th.
Motion.
Support.
Moved by Ms. Gavarecki, supported by Mr. Cisco. Are there any corrections, or changes, or additions? Hearing none, I'll ask for the vote. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That's carried. Citizens' comments on agenda items, and it's limited to 3 minutes. And because of the problems we had last week, once again, I want to caution everybody about defamatory attacks or invasion of other people's personal lives. There's to be no questions, comments, discussions, or attacks regarding anybody's personal life. I'm reading directly from the rules of decorum, which are on the wall over on our north side of the chambers here.
Mr. Mayor, just a point of information, you skipped the approval of the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Grano. Approval of the minutes for May 28th.
Motion.
Motion by Mr.
Support.
Keenan, supported by Mr. DeGiulio. Is there any discussion, addition, changes? Hearing none, I'll ask for the vote. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And that's carried. Thank you. Now we're where I thought I was. So if there are any citizens, please come forward.
Hi, Mayor. Hi, Council. Ms. Parker and everybody, Maureen and Mike. I have a comment on,
Just for the record,
just for the record, what?
your name.
Oh, Marcy DeGiulio. Clarification on police overtime. You know, this is one of the reasons, is the overtime that is inflating the pensions.
Is this supposed to be on agenda items only?
Correct, I am talking on that. So can I have another 30 seconds?
Clarification of police overtime, just in
Correct.
case people,
I'm
just in case
talking
people
about-
don't know.
I already said that.
I'm reaffirming what you have said.
Okay, thank you. I'm on the police overtime. This is one of the reasons why I don't believe this millage is going to pass. You know, we're talking about police overtime. For over a year, we have had in committee to have an auxiliary police force. They didn't want to take anybody's job. They didn't want to do anything. They wanted to have more boots on the ground, people in the street, walking on bikes. This would have eliminated much of the police overtime. For the street fair, they would have been there. I don't know how much money did we pay in overtime to the police force for the street fair. We wouldn't have had to do that if we would have had an auxiliary force. On the Hill, on holidays, we have officers up there directing traffic. If we had an auxiliary force, they would do it. You know, I've really looked into this, but since I don't have, and I'm not mentioning any names, but since I'm not on a committee that's looking into it, and I don't want my child to be a policeman, I've totally looked into this. And this was going to be at no cost to our city, and still, do not even want to look into the idea of having a police auxiliary force that would just help our own police force. So that would help the overtime costs quite a bit. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ray McGusson, citizen of Allen Park. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, Ms. Parker. This is about the street projects. On the end of my block, on Quant and Moore, there's a section there right in the middle of the intersection with 3 major potholes in it. They're over 6 inches deep. They've been there like since whenever, since the fall, since the weather started breaking them up. In the same street, I have a cone, not too far from the same area. There's a cone sitting there, sitting right along the curb where part of the curb has sunk. That is, I don't even know how deep it is. Good thing the cone's there. This is where I firmly believe the citizens really believe where our taxpayers' money should be going. We need our streets taken care of. I know it's going to cost us a lot of money. But when it comes to potholes, as large as the ones that are at the intersection of Moore and Quant, that's what I think should be taken care of, at a reasonable time. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Good evening, Brian Tebow. This goes for the street repairs also. Maybe when Mr. Morton's up here giving his presentation, he can include what the dollars that he's spending, what percentage of the roads are going to be repaired, what percentage of the roads aren't going to be repaired, and whether or not he feels a special millage for the roads would be necessary in order to keep up with what we have going. Thank you.
I see no other citizens coming forward, so we will go forward with the agenda. And we have a presentation by Father Joe Malia from St. Francis Cabrini Church. Father?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, Ms. Parker. I had an idea and met with Reverend Blakey of the Allen Park Presbyterian Church to kind of get his idea as well on a thought that I was having about trying to rally the citizens of Allen Park. Over the past several years, there have been many problems within the city. We're all aware of them, and what it's done is created a high level of anxiety and anger among the citizens in our city, and we feel that we need to come together in a non-political kind of way to rally the citizens and to elevate the discussion of our city and to close a chapter on one part of the story of Allen Park, to begin a new chapter, a new section of our city. Too often we have been fragmented by these problems that we've suffered in the city, and we thought as religious leaders it would be good to create a grassroots movement within the city, and the city has been very cooperative. I thank Joyce Parker and all the other members of the staff here for their cooperation. The DDA is on board with this. I think people are starting to talk about it, and it's kind of generating the groundswell we were hoping that it would, to get people excited about Allen Park again, to be proud of our city. And we have much to be proud of. We have much work to do. We have much healing to do. But we have a future. We are not bogged down by the past. We have a future. We must move towards that future. We must do it together. We can have differing ideas, but we have to let go of anger, because anger is a detriment to a future. We have to let go of all the tensions that have plagued our city, because all it has become is a cancer tearing us apart. And we need to find a way to come together and work together to improve our city. For example, if the city doesn't have money to cut the grass, we all live near these parks, we all live near the boulevards, we can cut the grass. We can plant the flowers. We can trim the trees. We can pick up the trash. We can paint things. We can do things to improve our own city. We don't always have to take up a millage. We can just volunteer. And so there's so many ways that we can do this to improve our city, so many things we need to do in our city. And so I hope that you will support us in this effort. We're asking you to be there in a non-political role, just as citizens of Allen Park. On the 18th of July, we will gather at 6:30. We will walk from the Allen Park Presbyterian Church to the back of the St. Francis Cabrini Grade School. We'll have the rally there. We're trying to get as many businesses and the schools involved in this as well. And we want this to be a celebration. One of the things that we're talking about is we would invite people to bring desserts and have an old-fashioned kind of sit down on the grass and chat with your neighbor kind of evening. And maybe even meet your neighbors, because so often we don't even know who lives down the street. So that's the kind of event we want it to be. There'll be shuttle buses for those who cannot walk the distance. People are free to park at Cabrini and wait for the walkers to get there. There may be 10 people, there may be 1,000 people, we don't know. But whatever there is, we want to start by creating a new united spirit in the city of Allen Park. So that's my hope and my dream for the 18th. And hopefully, I know the religious community is behind it. I hope the civic community, the business community, and the citizens of Allen Park will get behind it and show up and show what Allen Park is really all about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Father. I have two items, and I'd like to have them done as a single consent resolution. The request for a bottle drive by Boy Scout Troop 1061 to distribute flyers on June 17th and to pick those bottles up on June 24th, 2013, and there is a $2 fee. Bottle drive permit for the Allen Park High School robotics team to distribute flyers on June 26th and pick up bottles on June 29th, and there is a $2 fee. May I have a motion on that, please?
So moved.
Mr. Hayes, do I have a
Support.
second? Support by Ms. Gavarecki. Are there any questions on either item? Hearing none, I'll ask for the vote. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That is carried. And Mr. Morton, your 3-year street plan?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I know you just got this today, but the reason that we wanted to get this to you is to begin a discussion on once again, last year I believe I did the similar thing, a condition of the roads as they are right now, where we anticipate doing our construction activity this summer, this fiscal year. So just to summarize, the city has rated and evaluated their roads twice, once in 2007 and once in 2011. In your packet, there's a chart, and we'll get to it. I just want to go through real quick. What has happened, the city's obviously spent money on those roads. I don't have a dollar amount per year back to 2007, but even though we're spending money on those roads, the condition is going, overall of the system is getting worse and not better. A couple things, there's what we call a mix of fixes depending on the rating of the road. Ideally, you'll spend some money on preventative maintenance, which is crack sealing type activities. You'll spend money on concrete patchwork, full depth, and you're going to set some money aside and have reconstruction projects. That's the goal of any street system. Now, it's very difficult to get to that goal, but that's the goal that we're striving for. So the first item is it should be labeled concrete surface rating summary. And just to help you go through this, we have a total of, well, it looks like 78 miles of concrete roadway in the city. The numbers at the top of this chart there are 1 to 10, 10 being the best, 10 being typically a reconstructed road, 1 being the worst, a failed road. So as you look, then there's 2 lines. One's the city major roads, one's the city local roads. So they're broken down into different ratings into major and local roads. So if we read across the bottom, we've got approximately 11 roads right now that are rated failed. Those are typically, the treatment is going to be reconstruction. For a local road, that would require a 50% local match to any road monies that we receive through the state. And as you move over to 3s, the 4s, and the 5s, those are getting to be less expensive treatments, but still nonetheless expensive treatments. We have approximately 45 miles of roadway that are rated to be full-depth concrete slab replacement. Then we'll go the ratings of 5 and 6. That's less expensive treatment, but as soon as you do those treatment, what happens, you do these treatment, and then there's automatic triggers that bump these ratings back up to a higher level. So below this chart is a kind of a guideline that we use to the typical types of treatments that would correlate with each one of these ratings. And the next report is the asphalt surface rating summary. It's set up the same way. We have approximately 16 miles of road that's asphalt surface. Most of that is what they call a composite. That's asphalt overlay of concrete street. And there's different treatments for those. But we're spread out a little bit more as far as the ratings. So it gives us a little bit easier way to deal with the roads that are asphalt surfaced right now. Most of these are all in some way, shape, or form on the website. If you go to the DPS, I've got these posted if anybody would like to go and look up their street. I think I have a report, it's approximately 50 pages long, broken down each street into different segments. The next page should be a chart, and I think maybe some in the audience may have it, might not be color. This chart is just comparing the 2 rating years that were done. So graphically, in 2007, we didn't have as many roads that it would be rated as poor. And then the bottom flow chart, if we go from the top red line says over this course of time between these 2 ratings, this is typically the decline in the roads. If you go to the bottom of that chart, the green line is the money that the city spent to put into the road system to upgrade it. So even though we've upgraded 13 miles of road between these two rating years, we still have an overall decline of, is that approximately 40 miles. And then those boxes in between just are how they go from, if they fall from one rating to the other, they might have been rated at good, and just moved to poor, or they might have been rated, to fair, they might have been rated fair and moved to poor. So these are just some snapshot ideas on how I look at the whole system overall and how we approach to get us back overall in a better condition than we are right now. The next sheet is a spreadsheet labeled Proposed 3-Year Street Plan by Treatment. And what I've done for FY 13-14, these numbers are based off proposed budget. All this money, I have towards the bottom, Community Development Block Grant area. We're still waiting on approval for that. But I do have some money penciled in if we're approved for that. But most of this work comes right out of the gas tax money that we receive from the state of Michigan. There's no general fund dollars involved in this. This is strictly doing the best we can with our Act 51 proceeds. So this first year, 13-14, there's a high concentration on just those concrete surface roads. What I'm trying to do, if you recall back in that chart, we had a large number of 3s and 4s, and those roads that are rated as 3, we're running on borrowed time to catch them before they're going to fall into that reconstruct category. Typically, if you have to come in with a full-depth concrete patch program, if you have to replace more than 50% of that street, then it's going to fall into a reconstruct. Because and once it goes into reconstruct, you're looking at different costs, more costs, and possibly different type of compliance regulations. If you get federal funding, which we had similar 2 years ago on Ecorse Road, there was certain provisions that we had to comply with because it was federal money. This spring, there was made available some federal aid money that we proposed 3 different projects for that we failed to get approval for any of them. Those projects, because they were federal aid, also they're going to require right off the bat that all the handicap ramps in that area of that project are upgraded, which is going to increase the cost. You're going to have design costs. You're going to have some extra engineering costs. So even though overall you're getting a whole new reconstructed road, there's going to additional costs that go into that. So we're trying to avoid it with our situation of we have so many roads near that critical line. So we're really focusing, as we did last year, construction season, on trying to do the concrete patch and saving as many as we can right now.
So are you saying then you're budgeting for 2013-14, $680,000 for major streets and $565,000 for minor?
Yes. Yes. And based on the budget, some of that I plan on using some fund balance. There is some fund balance in both the major and the local roads. I've got a bridge project. We have 2 bridges that we currently own that we just last fall had inspections done on, and we have every 2 years we're required to do inspections. The inspector noted a couple items that needed to be addressed on there, some spalling issues on the bridge decks and on the, I'm trying to think, I think some guardrail issues on one of the bridges. So this number is $315,000 was was one of the projects we proposed in federal aid. That's where I got that number. Now, is all of that critical to do right now? I'm not sure. I haven't gone back, but I haven't actually got farther into this project, but that's going to need to be addressed, and I need to budget for it. So then as we go to year 2, which would be FY 14-15, you notice I put some, I've got it labeled mill and overlay, HMA. Those are the composite roads right now that we can still spend some money on, bring them back up to a better grade. So I wanted to address those. I know a couple of the composite roads right now are due to be milled over and relayed with asphalt. Some of the concrete roads, perhaps we can do some asphalt patching in the bad joints and overlay those. But I wanted to start trending into addressing some of those other areas, those other roadways, and not get caught that we lose those either. Similar in 15 and 16. And those numbers, those last 2 years, they're going to be a lot dependent on, historically, our revenue from gas tax has been going down. I think last year we were at approximately 1.6 million. I think 4 or 5 years ago we were up near close to $2 million. Those revenues have been decreasing. We have been looking for different funding opportunities. Like I said, we were able to last year get one area of town that qualified for block grant money to do a lot of patchwork in. We've applied for different federal aid projects. That's highly competitive. Typically, those streets are going to go to either the counties or, such as we had with Ecorse Road, a pretty main road. If you're the average citizen, if I'm the average road driving down it, I'm going to think it's a county road. Most of our roads, because of the traffic counts, which is one of the qualifiers for that money, we're not going to qualify, and we probably will never qualify. The very last page is proposed projects that I've estimated some costs on, which align with the proposed budget. The top, if you go across the top, some of the columns, the source of funding, a lot of these are some of my notes. Major street, local roads, local streets. These are just were internally with our road funds where I'm going to come up with that and make sure that I budgeted for them. These are full depth slab replacement concrete patch, or they're going to be joint sealing, joint repair. Some of these, if you look under location description, very first one is Champaign, Pelham to Vine. To give you an idea of the treatment costs, so I went out and estimated that for crack sealing, $25,000, and that is approximately a mile worth of road. If you go down, let's pick another one to give some magnitude. Right in the middle, I've got one project, proposed project, Manor, Allen to Leslie. There's one block there on Manor Road that wasn't asphalt capped. For that one block to do a full depth slab replacement is going to be about $52,000 to do one block. So that, when you start looking at things like that, that's why some of the stuff we reviewed at the beginning, I put this in some of my decision making, that We need to spend some money on the roads that may look good to the average citizen, but if we don't spend money, then they're going to fall apart and we're going to end up in worse shape. We could spend all our money on reconstruct, I'm going to say, 4 blocks a year. Well, the rest of the system is not going to be able to, pretty soon the rest of the systems are going to all need reconstruction, and we're no way going to get that kind of funding. So what I'm trying to do is spread it out between full depth slab replacement and joint sealing, which is more of a preservation to preserve those streets that are out there. Questions?
Council have any questions?
I have a question.
Mr. Cisco?
I guess I have in my mind a particular street that's really, I think, in bad shape, but I'm not an expert other than driving over it, and it's really bad. And that's Vine Street, right by the middle school.
You are correct.
And there's a part of that street that is just crumbling. And I know you guys have been out to patch some really deep holes, which is temporary. How do you just, that's a heavily trafficked area because it's school, we have buses and stuff. Do you account in your analysis for things like that, like in front of a school where, the buses are coming every day and there's, literally hundreds and hundreds of cars morning, afternoon, evening, picking up kids and stuff?
Yes.
Yeah. But I don't see it on the sheet here, is what I'm
Well,
saying.
not for this year. That's going to fall into the 14-15. That's probably going to be a good candidate for hot mix patching, asphalt patching, and then an overlay. Because of the joint deterioration is so bad. And if I can, my thought was to get the best bang for our buck. If I can put a big enough project together, it's going to lower the cost on overlay projects.
And Mr. McGusson came up here and mentioned about a large hole by his street over there. If the citizens call DPS, are we assuming that they're calling DPS if they see a problem with a large hole that cars are falling into? Is that the proper number to call?
Correct.
To call your department?
Yep.
And let everybody know where that's at? Because if nobody calls you and tells you about the hole, more than likely it might not get fixed right away.
Correct. And right now, to be honest with you, as we receive calls for coal patching, we're going to kind of stack them up. And then we might go out on a Friday or a Tuesday, but we don't have the crew or the manpower to go out every day. We don't have the crew to send a guy out for 2 hours to do 10 or 5 holes, whatever, come back, change trucks, and go be reassigned. So we're trying to be as efficient as we can. And right now, what we're trying to do is, as we get those calls, go out at least once a week. And if we don't get any calls, we're not going to send, we've got other tasks that we're doing. But certainly call the DPS. That's a good place to start.
Can you give a number out? Do you know it offhand?
No, I don't.
He's not trying to encourage anybody.
928-0550.
On my phone, it's Allen Park DPS.
What was it?
928-0550.
928-0550. Listen, Doug, are you finished, Harry?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I think the little pylon that has in the hole on Quant happens to be a catch basin which has degraded. So that's not a matter of going out with a coal patch truck and trying to patch. That's rebuilding a brick catch basin, So that's a rather major operation. But
Mr. McGusson is saying no.
No? Well, that's not the one I'm thinking of, because there's one right across from a house I own that is a sunken.
If I may,
Yes, sir.
catch basin at the end of Quant and Midway, taken care of a couple weeks ago with an excellent job. This is another one that actually the curb plugged in. There's not a catch basin.
Okay.
Right, there's water in there now, it's catching a lot of water. But it's not a catch basin.
It's a de facto catch basin.
But it has had that cone in there for, I bet you, over a month.
Okay. Well, the other thing I want to mention, Doug, is if I read your charts right, and I'm a big picture guy, I'm not one of these technical detail guys like Brian, but I think Brian's question led me to think about this. If I read your chart correctly, 56 miles of the 78 are rated 1 to 4, which is the lowest end, the worst condition. So that's 71 or 72% of all of our roads are either poor or fair or failed. Poor, fair, or failed. Now, that's a lot of roads, and if you just heard Mr. Morton say that it costs $25,000 to do a kind of a Band-Aid approach on a stretch of road that's a mile long, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out what the cost would be to repair our entire roadways in this community. And we've dealt with this over time. So, and I think Brian makes a point, because the citizen, Ms. Parker is here to try to, you know, shore up things, and one of the methodologies is to maybe appeal to the voters to bring some more money to bear to support public service. And if the public service is spending all their time pulling people out of sinkholes or craters, that'll be a different kind of role for them. So, I mean, we got a big problem here, not just public safety, which is an issue, of course, but there are a lot of other issues. And I guess I have one final question. You said that the roads monies we get are from gas taxes, and my quick arithmetic suggests, what, we get about $690,000 a year revenues from the gas tax? Is that what I figured, or am I incorrect in that?
I believe the last audited year, fiscal year 11-12, it was approximately $1.6 million.
Oh, does that include both the local roads and the major?
Correct.
Oh,
That's-
okay, yeah,
that's
because
both.
I had that number down below, and I wasn't sure if I had to add that to the second fund or not. So, yeah, that's about what I had, 1.2 or something like that.
That'd be majors.
Okay,
And then we're only allocated approximately $400,000 for local from the state. And then we're allowed internally to transfer up to 50% of our major money to local roads.
okay.
But that's how they do their allocation. And then internally, we can transfer some of that money.
One final thing, pardon me, but I had a call from a constituent about the medians along Southfield Road between Lincoln Park and Allen Park, where the grass is 2 or 3 feet high. I don't know if that's a Wayne County problem or if that's our
MDOT.
problem. Hey?
MDOT,
MDOT?
I've contacted them today to try to get their schedule
Okay.
for the grass cutting along South.
I told them I thought it was not within our jurisdiction, but hopefully if they're listening and back out home there, there's your answer from the expert, and we'll try to pursue that. And you'll follow up, right, Doug?
Yes.
Thank you. Does any other council persons have questions? Ms. Gabarecki?
Thank you for the report. The proposed 2013 CDBG money, when do you think we may hear on that? At this month's meeting? Glenn?
Actually, the county just sent us a communication yesterday that it will not be before July 1st at the very earliest. And if we spend any funds before they're allocated, they will not reimburse, so.
Okay, thank you. And just one more. I think when you did the concrete surface rating summary, did you indicate that there was 11 roads to fail, that are at failing, or did I misunderstand you, or?
Yes, what I did was combine those rated at a 1 or at a 2.
Okay, and you came up based on the mileage, the number of roads? I don't know where you came up.
11 miles.
11 miles.
Okay,
11 miles.
I misunderstood that, okay. Thank you, that's what I thought. I was trying to figure out where you got 11 roads out of these numbers.
Oh,
so,
no.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Morton?
I have one more question. Who actually inspected the roads? Is that your department that did that? Did you, or?
for when our contractor comes in?
Well, from this report,
Actually, the 2007 report was done by myself. And the 2011 inspections were done by our current staff. There's a training class that you need to go to. They went to class, they learned some basics of the software that was used, and was out and rated the roads. And actually, some of that money we were able to recoup from the state, but that's only on certain roadways, certain federal aid roadways that we have. So they did give us some money for reimbursement for going out and rating the roads.
thank you.
If there are no other questions, I'll thank Mr. Morton for his report and informing us. Mr. Keenan, would you like to speak to police overtime?
I would. I misspoke last meeting, and I want to clarify that. Mr. Diebolt got up to the microphone and was talking about overtime and quoted the number 680,000. And I was looking at the two lines, the fire overtime and the police overtime, which equals 500,000. And that does not include the alcohol enforcement budgeted overtime of 180,000. So I wanted to clarify that Mr. Diebolt was absolutely right, and I misspoke in my comments. And so I wanted to give him credit. I should have known better than to question him, because he is very diligent about doing his research. But that kind of brought me to the wondering, because as most of you know, I used to chair the Public Safety Commission years ago, and we used to get reports monthly about the overtime and how it was allocated and where it was spent. And I don't see that report anymore, so it kind of begged me to wonder how we were doing with that. So I had asked the chief to put together some numbers, and they were staggering enough to me that I felt like it would be interesting to share that with the public. And I want to qualify my comments by saying that the chief was very careful to try to give a real accurate interpretation of the overtime and how it's used. So when I'm talking about specific overtime, and I'll kind of lay it out to you, but in some cases, you know, he takes the pension contribution into consideration, the FICA contribution, so that we can get an accurate rendering of what's actually being paid out and what's actually coming in. And really, the chief states that really there's two types of overtime in the city, you know, and that is regular overtime that would be any call-in time, people that are sick, vacation coverage, all of that, and then, like I said, the AET. The AET, alcohol enforcement overtime, is budgeted at $180,000. And, you know, from our standpoint, a lot of times we don't tend to look at that because it is a budgeted item and not just, but it is absolutely overtime, and Brian was completely right. So with that, one of the good things about the 24th District Court being here in the city is that they track the alcohol enforcement money differently than they do anything else. So when those guys are out there on that budgeted overtime, writing tickets or, you know, pulling people over for alcohol enforcement, the court tracks that separately, and that was the report that we used to get at Public Safety, so that we could see what we were getting, basically the bang for our buck. Of that $180,000 budgeted money, what did the city bring in? How much of that was covered and recouped in that? So with that said, the chief said that there was really 4 different types of expenses that happen the way that the overtime is structured. You have just general overtime, which the city bears the full cost, which includes the price of the officer, the FICA contribution, the pension contribution. Then you have grant overtime, which the state and the federal government will give us grant for click it or ticket and stuff like that. Generally in those grants, that covers the officer's salary, does not cover pension and FICA contributions. Then you have what the chief calls reimbursable overtime, which would be like, I think somebody mentioned earlier, like when the Hill asked for coverage up there, or I think the street fair used it last year, where the city bills them. Now, in that reimbursed overtime, they charge that out with the FICA and with the pension contribution. So that is completely covered on that. The AET overtime is completely covered by the city. It's a general fund overtime. And like I said earlier, it's budgeted at $180,000. Now, according to the chief this year, and the year is ending here very shortly, but of the $180,000 for alcohol enforcement, I'll just touch on that first. They've only spent $158,959. But of that $158 that they spent, the collected revenues, now let me be clear here, the collected, so actual money, because we all know that there's tickets that the police officers write that either get dismissed or brought down, or people just don't pay their tickets. The collected overtime on that alcohol enforcement year-to-date is $324,377. So for the $158,959, we've collected $324,377. So it's more than compensated itself for that. The regular overtime, or the overtime that's just, like we said earlier, the call-in overtime for this year, is at $167,143. So the total overtime for the police department for this fiscal year is $471,087. Now, again, going in and we've got grant money at $33,045, the street fair reimbursed $12,556, the Hill traffic safety for the holidays reimbursed $17,820, Target Black Friday reimbursement was $800, Allen Park football reimbursement $2,248, and the seatbelt grant money was $37,795. So of the $471,000 of overtime in the police department, $428,000 of that was reimbursed to the city, leaving a grand total of $42,000 for the year of overtime. Now, with that said, going back to the AET overtime, there's $139,498 of outstanding tickets out there that have yet to be collected year to date. Assuming that some of those will be collected, some will be, discarded, but, if we were to collect that $139,498 that the officers actually wrote, it would put a surplus at $96,752 into the police budget if those monies were collected. But even taking that out, right now, like I said, of the $471,087, the only part that has not been reimbursed year to date is $42,446. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is, and again, trying to be real accurate with the numbers, when we talk about the other overtime, so that we're the total, the $471,087. The only money I've talked about coming back in is grant money and AET money. That's not regular ticket money, all right? So you've got obviously the other tickets that the police officers write do not get separated out by the court separately. And that money's divided up between Allen Park and Melvindale. And I won't even get into that, but if anybody wants to see, I have all the details here, the revenue split between Allen Park and Melvindale and all that stuff. But I thought it was very interesting when we talk about the police department, from my standpoint, when we look at overtime, and one of the things that I think a lot of us have been very critical about, even prior to Ms. Parker coming in, several of you will remember that this council laid off the traffic enforcement division, which was a huge money generator for the city. So sometimes we have to be careful. I use the term of stepping over dollars to pick up pennies. We cut those officers out, and the revenue, I mean, like I said, just look at the AET. I mean, you're talking about a threefold return on your money. And I think that if we went back and ran the numbers, and I didn't do it, but if you ran the numbers on those guys that were actually doing the patrol out there, the traffic enforcement division that we had initially put in place, I would contend that those monies that they brought in revenue between Allen Park and Melvindale would more than pay for the overtime and actually, quite frankly, probably the salaries of the guys. So I just wanted to make this public to you. I have the documentation here. Anybody's welcome to see it after the meeting if they'd like. But, we just need to be careful when we talk about overtime. And, some overtime is money generating overtime, and that's money that we need as a city. The fire department, I can't really say too much. Most of you know the fire department, the only real revenue the fire department can bring in is the ambulance runs. And if there's like a down power line, DTE will pay for the fire truck to sit out there they will reimburse us some of those costs and what have you. And some of, like I said, the ambulance runs and stuff. A lot of the overtime in the fire department is because of short staffing, and we know that. I mean, if we were honoring their contract and had the other 6 firefighters that, their contract calls for, that would be a lot more money than what they're spending in overtime. It's a lot cheaper to pay overtime than it is to have 6 more guys. But I contend that Ms. Parker she's gonna address the overtime in the fire department, so I'll leave that to her in negotiations, and I'll just leave that alone. But like I said, if anybody wants to see this, you're welcome to it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Mr. Hayes?
It's a very interesting and detailed, I would call it a justification more than an analysis. But I suppose I have my biases. We all have our separate biases. If they've spent $158,000 and the budget's $180,000, they basically are on par to hit the budget $180,000 for the rest of the year. There's 2 more months, as I understand it, or at least or another month anyway, so they'll probably clearly make the $180,000.
He calculated that out. The 158 is for the full year. That's what his intention
I
is.
thought he said it was year to date.
I'm sorry, if I said that, I meant.
Okay,
for
well, fine. And that's a step up. I think, I don't know about the $324,000 in revenue from the various alcohol-related things. We don't have to share that with Melvindale and the state. The state gets a cut, I think. Melvindale still gets a cut if it goes through our court, because it's a shared court. So I don't know that you can necessarily just say that these dollars are savings or benefits or whatever. I mean, you could easily, what if you had police officers that didn't work overtime that gave tickets or alcohol enforcement? I mean, only in government would you hear somebody say that, well, this is good to have overtime because we make money off of overtime. Well, just think how much more you'd make if you didn't use overtime. And if you planned and operated in a more efficient, business-like fashion, you probably wouldn't use any overtime. The ideal in business is to avoid overtime like the plague. Now, there are those emergencies where there's a fire or there's a wire down or there's a barricaded gunman where you can't avoid it. But you also have the support of your mutual aid. If somebody, like over here, we had an incident in our community where there's a gunfire, somebody shot a gun off or something like that. There was 16 cop cars there in 3 minutes. I mean, where'd all these guys come from? If they're that busy, I mean, why do we need so much overtime if we can get that many people in that short order? So I guess I have trouble. Somebody told me a statistic one time when I was in a class, and they said, Russia comes in second, United States next to last. The variable they forgot to mention, there was only 2 in the race. So you can take facts and figures and make them mean whatever you want. But I guess I don't trust those numbers, and I think we need to be very careful before we just assume that everything's hunky-dory with that. I would say we should avoid overtime wherever and whenever possible, and we shouldn't justify it, and I think that's what I just heard from my good friend Bob. Thank you.
Any other counsel, please? All right, thank you, Mr. Keenan, and...
Can I just add one thing, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
I would contend that, and I don't live in Melvindale, and I don't represent Melvindale, but I would assume that Melvindale does alcohol enforcement also. I didn't look at their revenues and their tickets and all that stuff, so I think it's an unfair, I mean, I'm assuming that their revenue would be, is that a fair statement, Dan? I mean, you're over there in the court, I mean, I would assume that Melvindale does alcohol enforcement like everybody else does. I mean, it's a pretty common thing, city to city.
They do alcohol enforcement. I don't know what their volume is there on a different day, so. I assume it's a lot smaller. I think it's like 75-25%, or 75% of the court, I believe.
I guess the fundamental question is there a law against enforcing alcohol with regular time rather than overtime? I don't think so.
If they're
That's
not,
the
if
issue.
they're not answering calls, the 2 or 3 cops we got out there at night, when the bars are letting out that are out actually answering calls, it'd be hard for them to be in 2 places at one time.
I would just say as to the revenue that the court has that exceeds its expenses and is divided 2/3 to Allen Park and 1/3 until, and I haven't seen a number, but having been on the building authority for 18 or 19 years and overseeing the payment on those bonds for the courthouse and looking at the budget from the court, but at we divide excess revenue of the court two-thirds, one-third with the city of Melvindale, and that's been historic since the new building went up. But until we laid off those 5 officers who had nothing but highway duty, Allen Park was generating approximately 80% of the revenue that was excess. That contract, if not renegotiated this year, will probably have to be renegotiated next year because the courthouse bonds will be paid off no later than May 1st of 2014 unless the last year's bond is called earlier. And I think Ms. Parker's looking at whether we want to do that, call that bond, and because there may be some economic advantages to the city to do that. So we have been the larger generator of the money, and we haven't, because of the division between the two, reaped all the benefits of our police department's ticket writing or other activities. So with that, we'll go to citizens' questions and comments, and again, I caution people.
I'm going to go slow because I'm nervous. Mayor and Council, how you doing? Been a long time since I've been up in front of you.
Name,
Here's
please.
where I'm at.
Name, please.
John Mensinger, 16144 Marquise, Allen Park. Been a citizen here for 20 years. I love this stuff, I really do. You know, I appreciate Father Joe's request. I'm all in for the march. Let's get us a millage. Let's do it. We need the money. But let's also be fiscally responsible with our money. I see a fragmented leadership. Leadership starts from the top. I see our council fighting with people in the hallway, and let's hire a lawyer and spend money on that. People aren't ready to throw money at that. Let's cry about a neighbor who can't put his fence in the right spot, and let's hire some money and spend some money on that. We have water leaking on us. We have cops getting cut loose, quitting, jumping ship. We have roads crumbling, and we're really gonna do those kind of things. We're gonna bloviate about where the overtime's going, whether it's right or it's wrong, whether the ancillary costs are versus the long-term problem. At the end of the day, the citizens want their trash taken away. They want their police and fire to come. They want their water to come on. That's where we're at. I'm all in for a march. We need this millage. Knock off the baloney and let's get to work. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Minister.
Good evening, gentlemen, ladies. My name is Colleen Peters, a retired Allen Park worker. I just want to make a statement. The last meeting, Mr. DiGiulio brought up the fact that two retirees' pensions was over $6,000 a month. I thought the citizens of Allen Park and the council might be interested in a little more information about our retirees. 43 retirees get a pension that is considered by the federal government to be below poverty level. 63 of our retirees receive pensions that is considered by the guidelines of the federal government to be low income. That's 106 retirees. That is 45% of our retirees of Allen Park. They are living on pensions that is considered poverty and low income. Another fact that seems to be overlooked, I hear about your contribution to pension, but nobody talks about the contribution that every Allen Park employee puts 6% of their wages in every single paycheck. They pay taxes on this money when they earn it, and it is not like a deferred thing like a 401k. Some of the people have worked 30 years and faithfully paid towards this pension. Personally, I don't believe the citizens of Allen Park or our retirees should be paying for bad decisions of elected officials. And I would like our elected officials to quit making the retirees the bad guys. We're not. We have paid into our own pensions. So quit trying to vilify our unions and our retirees. Let's place the blame where it belongs. Elected officials carelessly spent money Allen Park didn't have and expected the citizens and employees of Allen Park not only to clean up this mess, but to take the blame for it. Thank you.
May I comment on that?
You have your chance. No, she didn't ask you a question.